Now, after a successful wildcard in Game Week 6, we're going to take a look at my transfer plans ahead of Game Week 7 and also discuss when I'm planning on playing my bench boost. Now, of course, before we dive into today's video, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe as we're chasing down that 20k subscriber mark. Honestly, it'd be absolutely insane if, of course, we could hit that. As you can see on screen right now is Fantasy Football Hub. If you want to go and check out their amazing website, they're still running their 50% off sale. I'd highly recommend it. It's been a great tool at the start of the season, especially last week with wildcard planning. Like I said, there will be a link in the description for that one. But as you can see on screen right now, we're using their live feature and I have achieved a 2 million green arrow so far. As you can see, I'm filming this before the Everton game has taken place. We've got Tarkowski and Ndai still left. We're definitely going to be on a green. I think the only player that can really affect our effective ownership is going to be Grealish. Other than that, we should be coming away with a nice green. If those two can do very well, we could potentially, you know, start to break into kind of that top 2 million. Ooh, big numbers. But like I said, to get in that position, and I feel like a lot of people probably that did wildcard this week are going to be in a very similar position, a very healthy green. It is nice just to get some points on the board. It's nice to just see some big, juicy green arrows. Again, though, if you're still not, you know, in the place you want to be, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I would say probably around game week 10, if you're around like 1 million, that's usually kind of the benchmark we go for. That is the position you kind of want to be in. Talking through the wildcard itself, obviously was very template, but the template did well. Senesi, arguably one of the most essential picks right now. Gabriel with the bullet header. I think going forward, obviously, a lot of people are going to be looking to bring in Gabriel and Raya with some great numbers coming up. Semenyo as well, just continuing to deliver the goods. Reinders, a little bit disappointing. We'll obviously come on to him. Gokrez, again, had plenty of shots, but didn't really create kind of anything special. I think João Pedro could be a player that we do, of course, look to move on, but we'll talk about reasons why with that one. And then Erling Haaland captaincy. I mean, if you look at the underlying expected goal numbers right now, he is absolutely just smashing everybody out of the park. So yeah, clear captaincy as well. On our bench, we've got Dubravka with 1, Caicedo with 2, Anderson with 3, and unfortunately Joe Rodon with a 7-pointer. So wouldn't have been a terrible week for a bench boost, to be honest, but like I said, we didn't have that option available. But yeah, overall, pretty happy with how the side is performing so far. Let's get into some team news then, and two that definitely affect my side here. This is from Enzo Maresca, and it says Moises Caicedo, Santos, and João Pedro all picked up knocks during the defeat to Brighton. That is not really what we want to kind of see. They all have small problems going forward. They're going to have to see if they are going to be available for their game in the Champions League. So that could be a potential issue that we have got to manage going further forward, that we might be without João Pedro, who is currently the most owned player within the game, and Moises Caicedo. Two potentially big names for me and my side. So I am, of course, looking at some potential replacements. Let's talk you through them then. Let's start off first with a bit of a surprise package. I can't lie, it would be very against the template. It would be very differential. It would be Anthony from Burnley, who has been the standout player that a lot of people weren't expecting at the start of this season. There's some good fixtures coming up for Burnley. I think the next 3 are definitely kind of attackable fixtures. Aston Villa have been very mixed at the start of this year. I know they got that win against Fulham at the weekend. Is that going to be a sign of things to come, or are we still going to maybe see kind of a regression where, you know, Villa are kind of back to where they were for the first 5 game weeks? I don't know, but Burnley haven't been great throughout the kind of course of the start of this season, but one man who's continued to deliver has been Jadon Anthony. He also offers up the opportunity for bench boost options in Game Week 8 and Game Week 9. Now, I've been looking at a Game Week 9 bench boost myself. That is how I set my team up for a bench boost in Game Week 9. And Game Week 8, if I were to bring in Jadon Anthony, means that I could probably bench one of Tarkowski or Ndai, who've got Manchester City away. So again, offers me another good fixture. Game Week 10, not ideal, definitely would be on the bench. Game Week 11, probably could use him again there if we had to. And by game week 12, he's probably going to be looking at one of the players that we could be looking to downgrade to a 4.5. Or at that situation, maybe Cole Palmer, maybe Salah's back in the question, and he might become that placeholder that goes up to afford one of those guys. But I really do like him as a short-term punt, and definitely helps us with our bench boost situation. And like I said, he is the same price point as Caicedo right now, so would be a switch for switch, and would be a massive differential for the next few weeks that could do well with, of course, some massive games coming up for Burnley with Leeds and Wolves in Game Week 8 and Game Week 9 respectively. Obviously, looking in kind of terms of a cheaper option, it would be Granit Xhaka, a player that I was very tempted to go with on the wild card anyway. And he has just been, again, doing exceptional stuff. He's currently averaging 4.8 points per start at the moment. Obviously, off the back of his mega 9-pointer this week, but again, has just been very steady with defensive contributions. Again, he would offer us that opportunity to bench boost in Game Week 8 if we wanted to go for it as well, with a great fixture in Game Week 8, with Wolves. Obviously, Game Week 10 and Game Week 12 definitely playable yet again, but he could just be one of those steady eddies that, again, we have for large parts of the season where he can just be in our side, steadily tick along, and we don't really expect too much from him because, like I said, he's hitting defensive contributions, has set piece share, and on the Above Average podcast this morning, I was listening to it, they were questioning whether or not he could be the penalty taker. Now, Enzo Lafitte is the normal regular penalty taker. However, his minutes are kind of a little bit dicey and a little bit all over the shop. So maybe we could have a penalty taker at 5 million. If that is the case, then I definitely think he becomes a fantastic asset. But I'm not saying he's going to be confirmed at that. So he could be, again, another nice option that keeps the bench boost alive for Game Week 8. Obviously, João Pedro, I'm not impressed by the forwards at the moment. So there is only really kind of one option. I've looked at maybe going for Isidore from Sunderland. The minutes seem okay. He's actually been doing quite well on the underlying data. And again, would keep that bench boost option open in Game Week 8. But the option that I'm really liking is going to be Thiago. Again, has that good fixture for bench boost 8 that we could, of course, look to exploit. We know what we're getting with this guy. He's going to be on penalties. He's going to play very, very good minutes as the Brentford solitary striker. And it does seem like he is kind of getting the chances. He is getting the chances. Of course, we're going to have to bench him in 7 and 9. But I think for some of the other weeks, he is definitely a playable player. And like I said, for a guy that's going to get very good minutes, no European football, on penalties at 6 million, he feels a cut above the rest of the cheap forward market. And I just think longer term, once we've got the bench boost out of the way, I'm not really going to be looking for strikers anyway. I think a lot of us are probably going to switch to maybe a 2, maybe even a 1 up front formation once we've got that bench boost out of the way. You think if the likes of Saka, Palmer, Salah all look good when they return from injury, and of course Liverpool when their better fixtures come around Game Week 8 anyway, we might all be looking at potentially just a 1 or 2 kind of striker option and kind of stacking that midfield out with those more premium options. So it is something to, of course, consider over the next few weeks. Now, I'm not personally going to make any moves unless I absolutely have to this week. My ideal play is just going to be roll the transfer, maybe look at a potential bench boost, as we'll see in a second. But I think the ideal play for me is going to be rolled this week, get to 4 free transfers for Game Week 8 and have a really good plan after the international break. But let's go and have a look at how my team is lining up then for Game Week 7. Okay, so here we are back in Fantasy Football Hub. Like I said, if you want to go and take a look at their amazing website, there is going to be a link in the description. This is how the team would be lining up for Game Week 7. Obviously, we've got 3 free transfers in hand, taking 2 through the wild card. And like I said, if João Pedro and Caicedo are fully fine and available, then I'm very happy to roll the transfer. I'd rather get post-international break with 4 frees and have a really good understanding of what the landscape is looking like. Of course, navigate any potential injuries across that international break as well, and keep the Chelsea players for the good fixtures post-Game Week 7. Then I definitely think that is the more ideal play. However, let's say, for example, Caicedo is confirmed out and it is looking a little bit more like a long-term injury. Then as you can see here, one of the top replacements is actually Antony himself. And like I said, I would actually probably be tempted to start Antony ahead of João Pedro for that week. So that's something that we could, of course, do. So let's put him in here. Let's move on to Game Week 8 then. This is how the team would line up. And like I said, we probably could bench boost with this. We'd have Tarkowski, we've had Ndai, and we would have Anderson with all pretty difficult fixtures. However, Dubravka, Antony, and Rodon would definitely pull it back. But what we actually could do is just put Antony in there, Rodon in there, and I probably would still leave Dubravka on the bench. But again, a fine week to bench boost if we really wanted to. But game week 9 is looking probably, I would say for me, the more ideal week to bench boost, because João Pedro has Sunderland and Dye and Tarkowski have Spurs at home, definitely a winnable fixture for Everton. Anthony has Wolves, Dubravka has Wolves, Rodon has West Ham, and Anderson has Newcastle. So I think game week 9 probably looks the better week for a free hit. Even if we put Caicedo back in here as well, and we flick forward, make transfers, and we flick forward to game week 9. As you can see, he's got Sunderland, so it would be an ideal fixture. So like I said, I want to try and get to game week 8 without having to activate any kind of transfers, but of course we are going to be keeping a very keen eye on the Champions League lineups, seeing if Caicedo and João Pedro miss out. If they do, and then we get further comments from Maresca that they could be more longer term injuries, we might have to potentially look at some transfers for the next few weeks. That of course is going to conclude today's transfer targets video. If you did enjoy it or have any questions about your team, get them in the comments as we'll try to answer as many as we possibly can. Thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, we are on that road to 20k, so if you want to help the channel out, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. And thank you very much, and the best of luck for game week 7.